Welcome to Conversational Currency. I'm your host, Shadeed Eleazer. Conversational Currency is the fastest growing platform that focuses on the value and importance of social skills for business in the digital era. This is the Behind the Brand segment where we go into the stories behind the success of today's thought leaders and entrepreneurs. Now today, we have a special guest. Please explain, tell us who you are, and tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely, Shadeed. For one, I appreciate you having me on here. It's always an honor to have you as a friend, and so it's great to be here to give back to your audience. My name is Jeremy Wenger, and I'm born and raised in Huntsville, Alabama, but I'm 25 years old. But the story starts when my parents divorced when I was 10 years old. Fast forward 2 years after that, when I'm being the oldest of three siblings, my father actually put me as a pawn against my mom to do some different things, and where she inevitably kicked me out of the house to learn a lesson. And fast forward 4 years after that, I was already addicted to 10 combinations of drugs, and then also abused every which way except sexual abuse from my father. And then also when I went to working with him on the job site, that's how I actually got my start in what I'm doing today in the marketing and the HR. And because he couldn't communicate with his employees. And so I just sat there at 12 years old working with him. He didn't want it to destroy the relationship with me. His employees didn't want me to cry wolf. And next thing I know, they couldn't communicate. And so that's when I started to communicate at 12 years old. And it was just absolutely amazing because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I didn't like the way that made me feel. And so I just did something about it. So fast forward to 4 years, that's when after a lot of stuff happened in my life too, and being addicted to drugs, being addicted to, just to affection, attention, and then not knowing who I was and suicidal. I actually was, that's the night I was going to kill myself is the night that I changed my life around. And then started to restore the relationship with my father over 2 years after that. Ended up resigning because he was practicing some bad business ethics. And so then he ended up, he ended up passing away, but how it happened is what I want to focus on, because leading up to the 2 years, I was actually on a Thursday night. I went to go see him for the last time after running around town picking up friends for church and stuff. And, man, I didn't really plan on going to see him. And something in my gut just told me to go do it. And I just really, it was just peaceful. So every time the thought came across my mind, I go see him. And it ended up being the most 30 minutes charged. The most charged 30 minutes of my entire life that I ever spent with him. Because the following Monday after that is when I got the phone call that he had been murdered. And fast forward to September of 2016, after a 6-year cold case, they finally found the guy accused. And now we've had the preliminary hearing with him right now, but we have not had it's been escalated to grand jury. Now, one of the coolest things about this is I don't have any remorse against him. I don't have any resentment or any anger. I don't even want any hints of revenge. I've been waiting 7 years to tell this guy, look, I forgive you, and all I care for you is just I want you to have a brand new beginning. And since that just dropped in my heart to start to take that message in September 2016 to start helping people, it's first started helping them overcome the loss of a loved one, but now in the last couple of months it's been shifted to really help, because what I've seen is that through grief and different things in the workplace and any nonprofits or just teams working together, it all goes back to forgiveness. For one, forgiving yourself so you can forgive others and interact and build stronger relationships and really be able to, it just goes on to every area of your life. And so now we're developed the personal side of it with an 8-week program that has been great. It's something exciting we just kicked off to help people develop a traction point, so that way they can start the process of healthy closure. And then also on the corporate side of it, helping companies really lock down their culture within their teams and helping them, because if their culture is not healthy, their company will die.
Very powerful testimony and very powerful example of taking a scenario and building something from either tragedy, loss, or adversity. Now,
thank you, Shadeed.
Welcome. Now, sometimes when we look at the bad things in our life or the circumstances in our life that lead us to who we are today, we often pick the worst parts and we staple that to ourselves.
Right.
But at the same time, many of the skills that you've gained in terms of what you're doing today often come from that time of the cloudy period of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your father from both sides of things, because it's at one hand, he loved you, but at the other hand, he had his vices and his ways that led him to other paths in life. And how that example, how do you see yourself in him in through those times today?
Yeah, absolutely. There's when I was working with him, living with him for the several years, there are a lot of things that, like work ethic that I learned from him. Even though he didn't really practice it that much, he said that, Jeremy, if you don't have your word, you have nothing. And he also said that he said the third thing is that he said would always say is that you're only as good as your last job. And then also, whenever I would make a mistake, I would always like, I know. No, you don't. You wouldn't have done it. And it's just like and as simple as that sounds, knowing something is means that you believe it. Believing something is way different than talking about it and saying, I'm going to do this. We do exactly what we believe we either can or are able to, or even what's even possible. But then goes back to if we can or are able to. And whether you believe you can or not, that's a whole other story. And it's like then going through, looking at all these different things, and him saying one thing to the public, and then over here literally beating me behind closed doors. I'm over here saying this, and then all this, and then the employees behind me who I had the influence with saw all of this because he tried to do that in public to try and make himself look good. And that's another reason why I had their respect, to be able to leverage what I was learning as far as the business ethics go, to see all the stuff that was happening, that where now I can actually come back out and look at it from an eagle-eye view and say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to keep this right here because it's actually a good principle. And then chuck this and chuck that, and then be able to eat the hay and spit out the sticks, exactly what I was designed. Extract the principles, extract the staples of good, reverse engineer the bad, because there's no way in the world that you can ever degrade your employees and then expect the respect. You can't. And so it's like, he's not getting that. That's not how you do it. And boom. And that's what I did when I was 12. I was just like, it was so crazy. Because then, going back to, one thing I do take from his regret, because I could see it in his eyes all the time, it's one thing he lived with. But I couldn't really do much to help him because he was very stubborn too. Man, talk about, you set a glass of water in front of him, they'll argue it's Kool-Aid or something, it's flavored water, or there's a flavoring in it. You're like, what? And whenever you would prove him wrong, he would be like that stubborn dad. You're like, yeah, And one of the biggest things when I turned my life around, that is because I'm a Christian. That's where I received Christ in my heart. But it gave me a new pair of eyes to look through as well. And that's when I started to understand that the stuff that I went through that tried to destroy me, that was meant to absolutely just crumble everything, is exactly now what I'm taking it back and saying, okay, let's flip this inside out and let's kick that in the teeth every single day now by helping people actually understand what it's like to go through that. What better way? And so it's like, when it comes to all these things that I've come through, but it's also in a positive light, because even though I've gone through that, that's not who I am. That's not what I deem as my qualifications, because I know 45-year-old men, 50-year-old men. I had a past business partner who is now 75 years old. Well, getting up there, he's 72. Age means nothing to me. I don't care the number that you have on your driver's license. I really don't, because when it comes down to it, when it comes to business, if I can perform a job better than you, I'm getting hired. You're not. And so it's like the same thing with life. I don't care what qualifications you have. If your character sucks, we're not going to connect. Age has nothing to do with maturity. It has a lot of experience. And let me clean that up a second, because when it comes down to the things that we've gone through, but also what we've learned from it. I know some of the oldest martyrs who are also some of the biggest victims. You know, and they're actually self-proclaimed martyrs. and it's just, and now it's been able to really be able to see what a company like is not supposed to be like in a culture growing up. It built in a sniffer, so to speak. There's a radar, what to detect. I'm like, whoa, hang on one second. There's an aspect of this of what you said is something going on, and really just digging down deep and been able to really help with where I'm at now. And that's one thing I'm very grateful for, is being able to, even though that kind of stuff happened, it's important to be able to have a community around you and people who can help you who've been there or something similar, and be able to help you reverse engineer the mindset to have it be proactive instead of being victimized. And that's what it's all about. So, you know, the experiences are great, but it's about what are you doing now? How can you really overcome that? How can you truly push through that, but also have the connection of a community of other brothers and sisters who are here that are going through something, no matter how old you are, like no matter how extreme it is or how mundane you think it is. Something is something, because you're priceless. Your value is there's no price tag on your value. So it means that any small thing you go through is high priority. And so that's why it's, you know, I was, you know, when we were on, before we started recording earlier, you know, there was a ladybug here. You know, I'm sitting out here on my back porch right now, and a ladybug flew through the screen, and there's a screen in the window. And so it's a double pane window. Now, the ladybug went up through the screen, tried to go through that, but there's a seal. They couldn't get through it. So she goes back another way. And that if she would have known that her waiting there to kind of wait a bit just to figure it out, she could have just went down and into the house instead, because the window's a little bit open. Or she didn't have to try and feel like she was making progress going up, feeling good but never getting anywhere, being busy but not being productive, you know, trying to do things your own way instead of actually waiting and planning it out, or just trying to come back down. And then what happens is she froze there for a second. She froze midway through the window pane. And isn't that kind of crazy what happens when we do stuff the way that we know we shouldn't? But then we make all this progress. We go all the way up, and then we hit a ceiling, and we come back down. We freeze because we get exhausted. And I'm not making it up. I'm just sitting there. That's why you heard me say, wow, earlier. Like, that all was just sitting here right there. And then she flies to the other side of it. She's on the window pane, flies to the screen side, and latches onto it. And then I see her start licking the screen because she misses what she had. But she was still stuck. She had a little bit of it, but she didn't have what she could have.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened is she just had to let go of what she was hanging on to. And then she just dropped and went down under. Mm-hmm. Ladybug, it's no big deal. But that is something that getting out of my own way mm-hmm. is the number one thing I learned from my dad, because he did the opposite. He had a great heart, and I mean meant the best. However, there were some habits and stuff that really were not the best, and it caused a certain pressures in his life to act a certain way. And so it just came back from how he saw himself. So that's what was amazing over those 2 years to really to readjust that identity, and by example, just loving him in a way that he should be loved, so he could become the person I know he could be. And so it was just awesome and very trying.
Yes, the personalities within those that we love and that we pattern as role models for better or worse are often complex and often imperfect. And it's important to find the meaning in their own definition that allows us to carry forward in life. Now, when you are in the corporate environment and you're working with people to help them to determine healthy corporate culture, I'm certain that you can spot certain traits of imperfect environments. Can you go into the toxic behaviors of an environment or a work center and how you spot those right away?
Oh, that's easy. So it's something, when you walk into the place, you can already feel it. Like that, you can sense it. But then you can also tell in the body language of how they're interacting with somebody right away. Like you can, whenever you're being introduced, you're just saying hey to people, how they shake your hand, if they look you in the eye, if they do a firm handshake, it tells you so many things, whether or not they're confident in themselves, they don't like you, or they feel like this is an inconvenience, or they feel just like that they don't want to open up to you all the way, so they're just trying to do a side shake or whatever. They don't want to come full in and be exposed. That's a sign of vulnerability. And then you can also go into, like, whenever they shake your hand, if they do like a little, like a small frown, they're a little nervous. Some people, you can feel their hands are a little clammy. You can even read their body language from across the room and saying, if they're on their phone all the time, or even how they're typing, are they mashing? Are their fingers being getting a little pink, or if they're getting depending on their race, like the pressure right there. It's just like it is like you can tell so many different things about walking around the room, but also their interaction with one another. And that all happens right when you walk in. And there's so many things that are happening that are being unsaid that are also not being addressed. And they're being unsaid, they're being unaddressed. And that's why it's like so many times there are more, I always say this, but there are more businesses that have pink elephants than the zoo at times. Mm. Because you can tell as to, like, why are they not smiling when they're interacting with one another? Are they in the same room, and are they engaging with each other? If not, why not? Are they talking, having a great time? Are they having a great chemistry with each other? If they don't have that just that good feel, that like competitive drive, or whatever the case is, seriously, like, if they don't have that engagement interact with one another, and it's disengaged in some way, or if so they may be having a sales call or something like that. They may have just gotten a lead, or whatever the case is, whatever the niche is, whatever the industry is. It's still, when you walk in, they interact, whatever degree that is, you can tell whether or not it's healthy.
Now, in terms of environments that are toxic, we have certain situations that you've just illustrated where you have the clear steps in terms of the atmosphere that exists, right, as well as the clear signs in terms of body language and how people interact that will let people know that this environment is not healthy. So for those of you watching, these are the steps that have been provided that will allow you to either make the decision to move forward to a more healthy environment or work things out, which leads me to my next question or bit of perspective from you, Jeremy, which is, in business partnerships where there may be a rift or a misunderstanding, or where there's a misunderstanding between leadership as well as mid-management or employees, how do you facilitate the forgiveness process?
That's a loaded question. Wow. Excuse me. So what part of that do you want me to address first?
Partnerships.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I'm just messing with you. You said with the ownership, partnerships, mid-level, and then employees. But the biggest thing is when I come in and start to speak, what I do is I open up the floor. It is so important to develop it on an individual basis, because it can't be a mass, because it's so important to address it on an individuality, that how it actually functions outside of that is their call. And that's where when you lead with vulnerability and you lead with that, because that's what I'll do is I'll lead with my story and share some things about me, so that way they know that it's not just some spoof coming in and he's just coming in for just to get paid. But to help them really do a self-evaluation, to understand that, okay, you know what, this is a scenario that I'm in, this is how I feel. Okay, great, that's how you feel. Now, realistically speaking, these are some of the things that happen. These are the series of events that happen. Now, and asking on each of the milestones of what they highlight, because those are the biggest things in their heart that they're going to bring up. And so, and that's why it's on a, when it comes to working with somebody one-on-one with that, they have to highlight the milestones and then ask, okay, so this was my part, and this is their part. Okay, so I did this because the hierarchy of ranking and stuff, and when it comes to authority, that comes secondary, because they have to evaluate your actions. Because most of the time, they don't want to admit their actions. They don't want to admit their side of it. No, this guy, this girl did this. It's just like, but I did that. And and there's also, going through the whole process, it's like, okay, I understand that this is what happened. This is how I feel. Okay, but why do you feel that way? Oh, because of this and this. Okay, but then this happened because of why. Okay, great. Then they did this and this. Okay, so then what starts to happen is, regardless of the level, whether it be between partners, JVs, equity partners, your VCs, you've got your HR department, from owner to HR department, between the HR department, then from the HR, maybe one person, you maybe have a meeting or something going on. I don't know. So it depends on really what goes on, but the basic principles are, this is what happened, this is how I feel what happened. And then, okay, what could I have done better? Seriously, sometimes they can't even get to this first before they list out what they did wrong. So these are the 5 things that were done wrong to me. But this is the one thing I could have done better. Oh, maybe this one. Possibly this one. Okay, fine, I can do all these better. And then when you start to get the focus on them and find out, okay, look, this is what could have happened, but to go back over here to saying this is actually what did happen, do you know what happened behind the scenes? Like, can you put yourself in their shoes? Do you know the reason why? Because a lot of times the workplace, people come in and take their tension out. They come and take their frustrations out. And this is what's there to hang. And it's just like that, like, what in the world? And then most people don't know how to react to that because they have their own stuff going on. And then they just had another wrench thrown in the engine. And next thing you know, they have to get the focus on themselves and understand that, okay, you know what? Yeah, this is what I could have done better. And I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, because then you bring it back around and say, okay, look, dude, how much stuff do you have going on in your life right now? What's the reason why you could not tolerate another thing? Don't you think they've already passed that breaking point? And really to be able to establish that agile mindset of forgiveness and grace and mercy in people, so that way no matter how it looks like when it comes to the JVs, the employees, that yes, there's a different approach of respect when it comes to that, but that's the foundation of it, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and getting out of your own way. And then you go into the different evaluations of how is the situation right now. Like when it comes to the legalities of the partnerships, when it comes to this is what you did and you're being honest about what you did. And then you have the understanding of the situation, and then you go back into this, this, and this, and this, and this. And then you got to classify the approach and how to amend the relationship, and, going back to how they process information, the person that's involved, and also how have you been behaving this entire time too? And it goes back to your approach and like saying, whether you come back humble or you come back when you slip through the door, whatever. It's like, it just goes back to so many scenarios when it comes to interchangeable partnerships, down to the HR department, to the mid-level employees, down to they're involving individual situations that don't need to be cried wolf to the owners and all that stuff, because a lot of that is glorified babysitting. A lot of people can just take care of themselves if they just understood this. And so that's where really developing that core, that heart, and then also that's the start for the overall culture, regardless of the dynamics that are involved into it. Because then you have the bottom level employees, more than likely are the ones that are communicating with the public. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes they do, but even over the phone, customer support. Especially with larger corporations, they have a customer support department. If they're mid-level employees who are delegated to work with those contractors or the department, brand is done. Well, talk about bad reviews.
Definitely. Now, in terms of the leadership,
Mhm.
when you're working with someone and you see that there's issues, and when it comes across your radar that this person has suffered from abuse that they have not dealt with, but how do you initiate that awkward discussion in the context of them being a leader, them having to lead a team of employees in an organization? How do you take that discussion of abuse offline, or what are your techniques to introduce that once you notice that their behavior is a byproduct of years of abuse that hasn't been dealt with?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest things is the scenario will create the platform itself. So it's not going to be a secret what's already in their heart, because they're going to emphasize different aspects of a conversation that mean the most to them, period. And so there's going to be a reason why they're bringing up different aspects of something that mean way more to them than the other person. And so then that's when as I start listening, I start hearing things, and that's when I pull them aside and completely unrelated, where it's not where anybody knows about it. And I talk to them behind the scenes. It's like, hey, what's going on, man? I've noticed a couple things. I just wanted to, and if I'm completely wrong, I will be the first one to admit it. And I have no problem being wrong at all. And then I tell them, and then what I think they're dealing with, that's when I share a story from my past. And that right there is way better than saying, hey, I think you're dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What happened is I'll share the story, and they're just like, you know what? And usually they open up, because, more than likely what they're going through with that kind of area, I have either been through something very similar, if not the exact same thing, that has a principle that is the root of that hurt that they have. Because, there's plenty of examples. When there's a show that is about investing in businesses, that is a watch company. And the guy did not want to let go of something that's what was hindering and destroying the company, actually. And it was a deep-rooted, not forgiving himself. And there's some other things that were in there too, but that was the main root of it. And it was when he was able to overcome that, man, that company is doing amazing right now. And so I think it was Flex Watches is what it was. It was with Marcus Lemonis. With the profit is what it was. I saw that, and I was just like, man, that is so amazing. And that's the importance of it. And it's just that's a prime example. So it's like being able to pull them aside and share a story that really resonates with that heart, with what I think are the issues. It'll either draw exactly what I thought out, or just open up the door to really go in conversation with that.
Now, for the people who are watching this, who are in the middle of a personal or professional rift that they have no idea how they will have the ability to overcome the amount of resentment that they feel, what are your strategies for finding the place to start to begin to forgive another person who they have a personal relationship with, or a person that they've had a professional relationship that has gone terribly wrong?
One word: why? Why do you feel that way about what happened? Why do you feel betrayed? Why do you feel alone? Why do you feel depressed? Why do you feel the way that you do? And describe it the best way you can. The biggest thing is, if you do not journal, you need a journal. And crack open a journal if you have, even if it's been a while or never before, that crack open that journal and dump everything. I mean everything. Don't feel shy. This is only between you, yourself, and Eugene or Eugenia, whatever. And so this is completely between you and yourself. You're the only one that's going to see this. You're not going to share this with friends. You're not going to share this with your partners. This is none of their business. Literally. This is something that you can dump out everything, all of your concerns, your fears, your worries, your pain, your scars, all of it. And you can start to unload that weight off your shoulders. Once and for all, and just throw that weight down. And let it quake the earth off from your shoulders onto the ground. And then once you get it out of your heart, then you're going to start to be able to reevaluate all this stuff and read back through it. And don't shy away from reading back through it, but read it out loud. Because what happens is when you read it out loud, you start to hear yourself talk. And then you start to say, wow, that was actually kind of crazy, but no, it was because of this. And you start to go even deeper into down to the root of why exactly you're doing that or how you're even reacting that way. Because your perspective is a very thin film of how you interpret things. It happens so fast. I mean, like, you don't even notice it sometimes. Like, it's like you literally walk into a room, you're like, yeah, the guy's a hipster. Like, wait, what? Maybe he just liked a mustache. I don't know. But it's that perspective, that branding, that tunes your mind to think a certain way. Because it's like this right here. It only allows you to see certain aspects of things. And once you can dump out that perspective and look at it yourself, then you can do the analysis of whether or not you're crazy or not. Just kidding. But but it's one of those greatest things that you can dump out that perspective and really just look at it yourself and start to evaluate, okay, I feel this way. And then I was justified in this, but realistically speaking, I could have done this better to prevent that. Now, understanding the contingency plans that you could have done that are not practical, wait till later, chuck them. Don't focus on them right now. Focus on the practicality. This is the situation you're in right now. Like it or lump it. What you did got you here, or lack thereof. And that goes for the people that you're thinking of right now. Because one of the biggest things that I've seen, even in my own life, is that every single time that I said it was my dad's fault, no, didn't really work. Not for him, at least. Because I called him back and apologized, even though I was right. And I'm glad now that every one of those conversations ended in "I love you." Because if they didn't, I wouldn't be standing before you today. And that's the truth.
Oh, very, very, very powerful statements and testimonial and advice. Now, where can we find more information on your message, your movement, and how people can get closer to your work and possibly work with you?
Yeah, legacydriven.life. They just go there and they connect with me on, people can actually Google me and they can find me on LinkedIn. That's the number one place I'm at when it comes to social media. And, getting more on Facebook, getting more on Instagram as well. And so, but definitely on LinkedIn, they can just Google my first and last name, find me on there, and go to legacydriven.life.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful journey down the path of Jeremy in terms of his upbringing, his circumstances, adversity, and how he reframed those circumstances to bring meaning to the lives not only of himself, but to create a platform that brings closure, forgiveness, and greater understanding to others. It is my ask that you go to the website and you learn more about various techniques and skills to learn your power of forgiveness within, because relationships are the one contract that we can never break, because when you think about somebody, you invoke their memory, and their spirit becomes part of your day and your overall consciousness. So it's important to make amends wherever you can and find the tools to go beyond yourself so that you have the ability to mend those bridges and build a better tomorrow. On behalf of Jeremy Wenger, I am Shadeed Eleazer, and this has been the Behind the Brand segment of Conversational Currency, which is the fastest growing platform that focuses on the value and importance of social skills for business in a digital era. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to spend your time with us. And for that, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching.